Okay, our next speaker of the day. He is one of the 4 co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation of Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences, or better known as FREE, and one of the 2 co-chairs of the Free Experiencer Research Committee. He is also one of the 3 co-editors of the historic 820-page book titled Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence, based on FREE's 5-year comprehensive academic research study on UFO-related contact experiences. He graduated with honors from Rutgers College, was a master's candidate at Cornell University, was a PhD candidate at the University of California at Berkeley in City and Regional Planning, where he was the recipient of the National Science Foundation PhD Fellowship. He is currently employed as an estate tax attorney with the U.S. Department of Treasury. He previously was an adjunct professor for 6 years at the New School of Social Research and the City University of New York. Previous to March of 2012, our next speaker had 0 interest in consciousness, UFOs, the paranormal, non-human intelligence, and all this other crazy stuff that we talk about. Beginning in March of 2002, however, he, his wife, and his daughter began to have conscious physical contact with non-human intelligence in their family home. They also had a series of paranormal experiences at that time and have seen large UFOs, one time for more than 45 minutes at a distance of less than 30 feet. Okay, this is real contact, right up close. He now devotes an extensive part of his life to understanding the true nature of our reality and writing academic articles for free. He has published academic articles in the Journal of Scientific Exploration and the Journal of Consciousness. He has lectured internationally on the topics of consciousness, UFO contact with non-human intelligence, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and the Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum holographic theory of consciousness. Join me in welcoming Rey Hernandez.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me well? Okay. Apologize for the delay. We had some computer problems, but now it's fixed and running well. The year was 2012, March 4th, 2012, when my first experience began. Since I don't have a lot of time, I am not going to be talking about my personal experiences. When people have met me, then we shared our experiences, and I can tell you about these experiences, which is your total worldview is turned upside down. You're not the same person after these experiences. As was stated earlier, the name of our organization is commonly referred to as the Dr. Edgar Mitchell FREE Foundation. And what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about a lot of data, a lot of slides, bar graphs, pie charts, all relates to a 5-year academic research study that we completed last summer, last July. The title of my presentation is Establishing a New Paradigm of Reality. What I'm going to be presenting to you is a new way of viewing the UFO contact phenomenon. And not just the UFO contact phenomenon, but all of the paranormal. I'm going to go over a little bit more about our organization. We have 15 mainly retired academic professors. Roughly half of them are experiencers. That's why they're interested in this. And 10 individuals, many of you know Kathy Martin. She was a member of our board of directors from the very beginning. So the title is Establishing a New Paradigm of Reality. What is the relationship between consciousness, our cosmology, and contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities? Again, this presentation is dedicated to the Dolores Cannon, who in my opinion was a spiritual mystic, and to the late FREE co-founder, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, 6th man to walk on the moon, and founder of both FREE and the Institute for Noetic Sciences. Dolores Cannon was correct. It is way beyond UFOs. Instead, it's about consciousness and spirituality. She always had it right. from her book, The Convoluted Universe. The universe is a highly complex organism living in many dimensions at the same time, composed of layers and layers of consciousness within the matrix of the universe, are all the building blocks of reality. Most people don't understand that if you graduate with a PhD in theoretical physics anywhere around the world, you are an adherent to a multiverse theory. Okay? String theory, which is what most of the theoretical physicists are nowadays, holds that there are 11 or 12 dimensions. But yet there's another 40% of theoretical physicists that believe in different alternate theories. So again, these physicists know that we don't live in one universe, one reality. There are multiple realities. But yet the vast majority of the public does not know that. But yet Dolores Cannon knew that. So, tribute to Dolores Cannon and the late Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay, our organization, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell FREE Foundation, is a 501c3 academic research institute. We have 4 co-founders, we have 8 board members, and 17 advisors. We have 9 PhD academics, 3 medical doctors, and 10 non-academic lay researchers. Dr. Rudy Schild, who is an emeritus professor of astrophysics at Harvard University, his main focus over the last 25 years has been, what? Black holes. And recently that got front page headlines. For the first time ever, they took a picture of a black hole, but Rudy drew that picture out for me when I first met him. 25 years ago, he had that information, and now it's coming to light to the general public. Rudy was also a very close friend of the late Harvard psychiatrist and UFO Contact researcher, the late Dr. John Mack. And Rudy was one of the few academics to publicly support Dr. John Mack during his inquisition. And Rudy is also a very close friend of the late now Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And he worked with Edgar and as well as 20 other PhD physicists from around the world on what Edgar called the quantum hologram theory of consciousness, which is a formulation of the nature of our reality. Rudy is also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Cosmology. Again, I repeat, Rudy is our executive director. So this is not a Mickey Mouse organization.
My name is Dr. Rudy Schild, and I am the Executive Director of the Edgar Mitchell FREE Foundation. For 45 years, I've been a member of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, which has been a wonderful community for me to work in numerous topics in astrophysics. Investigations with telescopic observations, and also combining those with spacecraft operations on stars and planets, on the nature of the cosmology of our universe, on black holes, and on gravitational lenses. And in a 45-year career, I've basically seen it all.
Okay, Edgar Mitchell, co-founder of FREE, the 6th man to walk on the moon, but more importantly, from Edgar's perspective, he was the founder of the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is now the world's leading institute that studies the science of consciousness, the science of ESP, precognition, etc. They have a very large staff there, and the lead scientist is Dr. Dean Radin, who's published 4 books, again, science-based books, not woo-woo science. And you'll hear from him a little bit later on. Edgar is also the father of the UFO disclosure movement. He devoted the last 40 years of his life to studying human consciousness, psychic and paranormal phenomenon in the search for a common ground between science and spirit. He was also very much interested in promoting friendly relations, what he commonly called the ETs, or UFO-related non-human intelligence. And also, Edgar knew from the very, very beginning that this was way beyond UFOs. This is not just about UFOs, but much, much more complex topics. And a little bit about me. I'm not going to go too much because the other A previous gentleman spoke a little bit about me, but basically I spent many, many years in academia, went to Berkeley for a PhD, Cornell for a master's degree. As you can see, I had very high GPAs, so I wasn't a knucklehead. And then I was one of the co-authors of our book, which is right here. I'll show it to you a little bit later on. Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And we've also published parts of our research in 2 peer-reviewed academic research journals. Mary Rodwell is the 4th co-founder. She's one of the world's leading researchers on UFO-related contact experiences. She's a certified psychologist and therapist in the UK and in Australia. She lives in Australia, and she has supported more than 3,000 individuals that have seen UFOs and have had contact with non-human intelligence. She has worked with our research committee since it was founded. Our research committee one time had 15 individuals working on it. And she's also director of Free Support Committee. We have 3 PhD physicists, 3 PhD psychologists, 1 PhD neuroscientist, 3 medical doctors, and 10 non-academic lay researchers. Terminology. We use the term UAP instead of UFOs. Why? Because UFOs, people associate with a physical craft. But the people that are seeing these objects in the sky, they're almost anything but a physical UFO craft. They're seeing all rates of different energy, configurations, lights, light movements, you name it. Thousands and thousands of different forms of energy out in the sky. People do see physical crafts. My wife saw a physical craft several times, and many of the speakers here have seen physical crafts. But most of the time when people see these objects in the sky, like the one I saw, was the size of a football stadium, right on top of my next-door neighbor's house, but it wasn't what we commonly know as a UFO craft. It was comprised of thousands and thousands of lights that you could tell that this was not human. 100 meters up, 600 meters back. It was enormous. Now, we also use the term non-human intelligence instead of ET. When you use the term ET, people usually associate 3-dimensional reality, a physical being that's in our 3D reality. But surprisingly, the vast majority of people also see not only physical beings in our 3D reality, people are also taken to other dimensions, other realities. So it could be terrestrial, intradimensional, interdimensional, multidimensional. So non-human intelligence refers to all of the above. And we think it's a much more broader definition that this field should begin to use. Also, we are not a UFO organization. We have no interest in the materialist nuts and bolts approach. For example, reviewing photos, videos, medals of a physical UFO craft, or discussing Roswell for the millionth time. We believe that over the last 75 years, this approach has provided minimal contributions to the understanding of this extremely complex phenomenon, which involves a manipulation of space-time. Instead, our focus is on the UAP contact experiencer and all of the experiencers of the contact modalities, which I will define in a couple of minutes. This is Dr. Dean Radin, the lead science at the Institute for Noetic Sciences, and he's going to talk about Dr. Edgar Mitchell's interest in these topics.
I knew that Edgar was very interested in pursuing the UFO ET contact idea because he had become convinced through his own experience and through his contacts with other people that there was something there, there's something worth studying. So part of his genius and his passion was to use the best tools that we have, the tools of science, to understand the full range of experiences. So IANS has generally not been focused on the UFO thing. It's partially because we can't study everything. We want to focus on a few things that we can study well with the tools that we have and also the funding that we have. And we're doing quite well at that. But we can't study everything. So we're leaving the idea of non-human intelligence contact only looking at it at this point in terms of mediumship and channeling, which is a strong overlap then, because a lot of the experiences in a different context, which might be thought of as an ET extraterrestrial something, could be thought of as, and in fact probably is, very close to what channelers talk about. They're always talking about space people. So we don't know what that is, but it comes up again and again. And somewhat, not quite as much, but mediumship studies where we're looking at psychics who are very good at seeing something. They're communicating with something that others can't see, and we know that they get verified information. We can check that the information is correct. So in the case of looking at the larger body of a very wide range of experiences, this is where Edgar was very interested, and FREE has basically taken up the mantle for that part. So in a sense, we're like sister organizations. We're taking, as best as we can, laboratory approaches. You're a little bit ahead of us in that sense, and finding out, well, what's happening in the population at large.
Again, Dr. Radin mainly has focused on the psi phenomenon, on ESP and precognition and psychokinesis. And he's published over 50 peer-reviewed academic studies on these phenomenon. Okay, just to summarize the important parts that Dean Radin said, he says that FREE has taken up the mantle of academic research on the paranormal contact modalities. Their organization, to tell you quite frankly, they see UFO as a taboo topic. It's like all of a sudden they have all these big funders. If they get involved in UFOs, all of a sudden that funding is eliminated. That's why they're not into that stuff. But Edgar was. He also said in a sense that both IONS and FREE are like sister organizations, but that we, the FREE organization, is a little bit ahead of IONS in finding out what is happening to the population at large. Why? Because we're focusing on experiencers. We're focusing on non-human intelligence, which they and many, many other parapsychologists will just not focus on. Again, because these topics are taboo topics. Okay, we believe that the experiencer of contact with non-human intelligence is the key to understanding this complex phenomenon and not a physical UFO. Just over the last 2 days, I've been speaking with many, many of you here, and you've told me your stories. These are fascinating stories. We could learn more about the 10 people that I spoke with at length yesterday than all these people that take videos and audio clips of UFOs and things of that sort, okay? Just talk to among yourselves. You'll have a much better understanding of what really is going on than this latest video from a pilot in the Air Force. You know, so what? Thousands of people, millions of people seeing UFOs. That's not telling us anything. The experiencers we're talking about. So, but if you really want to understand, talk to an experiencer. Unfortunately, previous to our study, we knew very little about the UAP contact phenomenon. Why? Because the basic, comprehensive, multinational academic research was never undertaken. What you mainly had was thousands of people that wrote their book about their own particular experience. But you never had an academic research study that was done internationally in multiple countries that asked the same consistent questions. So now I'm going to go a little bit about that study. Our organization, our focus is on consciousness. In other words, what is the nature of our reality? And we're doing it by undertaking cross-comparative research on individuals that are having various types of contact with non-human intelligence with what we are calling the contact modalities. The contact modalities. FREE hypothesizes that we are interacting with non-human intelligence via various paranormal modalities, and that all of these contact modalities might be derived from one source and might be one phenomenon. This is George Knapp. Many of you have heard him on Coast to Coast for, I guess, 25 years. Very well-known individual that has presented thousands of speakers to talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Let me try to summarize what he says. Again, he said that the lesson that all of these paranormal phenomenon is teaching us, from his opinion, not mine, it says that they're all interrelated. So he also believes the same thing that our organization believes, that all of these paranormal contact modalities, which I'm going to talk about a little later on, that they're all interrelated. He also said that flying saucers might not be crafts from other worlds, that these visitors, quote unquote, might not be from another planet. And he said, by us focusing on these flying saucers is not the answer to these bigger questions. He says you need to have a much more broader understanding of the nature of our reality, that reality is far more complex than we could imagine. And he says, and it makes UFOs, Roswell, and crashes look very small. Dr. John Alexander received a PhD, and his dissertation was on near-death experiences. He's also been the director of the Remote Viewers Association. He's also spent a very long time with Robert Monroe to learn how to do out-of-body experiences. He's written a book about UFOs, and he's also has been all around the world with his wife to meet with different shamans to encounter the spirit world. So this is a man that has researched all of the contact modalities all of his life.
Understand it. You now believe that if we're going to understand the UFO phenomenon, we have to look at it in this wider context, including interspecies communication, shamanism, higher states of consciousness, and so on.
Right. Remote viewing. I did a lot of work with near-death studies. I was once the president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And it is my premise that somehow all of these phenomena are connected. One of the problems in looking at it is we tend to stovepipe. And I think in doing that, you cut off a lot of the information that would be helpful in understanding a theoretical basis, which does not exist at this point.
By using the term stovepipe, I think you mean trying to see it as a single discipline rather than an interdisciplinary approach.
Very much so. And yeah, you look at near-death experience, poltergeist, remote viewing, UFOs, and they cut off access of the information in between. And I think that's a mistake.
Okay, what he's saying is that the UFO people only see UFOs. They have blinders on. They don't see the periphery. The near-death experience folks, only near-death experiences. The out-of-body folks, only out-of-body folks. The remote viewers, only remote viewing. What he's saying is that we need to be able to study all of this phenomenon as one phenomenon, see what interrelationships are there in this phenomenon. All of the people that I've mentioned here and that are in our board of directors, all of the scientists and all the researchers believe that all of this is one phenomenon. So therefore, the mainstream materialist ufology folks are totally missing the boat here. Okay, this is way, way more complex. Okay, we hypothesize that consciousness is what unifies the contact modalities, and that consciousness is primary and not our material reality. The majority of mainstream ufology researchers view the UFO phenomenon from a materialist perspective. The free academics, medical doctors, and researchers do not. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a couple of seconds. Materialism, the idea that matter is the only reality, and the belief system that the mind is nothing but the physical activity of the brain, and that our thoughts cannot have any effect upon our brains and bodies, our actions in our physical world. Research on quantum physics, the psi phenomenon, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, mediumship, hallucinogens, and now our free UAP experiencer research study supports the hypothesis that the mind can exist separate from the brain, and that consciousness is key. All you need to do, how many people here either have had it or know someone that's had an out-of-body experience? Okay, quite a bit. Thank you. Once you've had an out-of-body experience, you know you're not flesh and bone, that there's something else, a consciousness, a spirit, whatever you might want to call it, that's independent of the body. That's what Dolores Cannon focused on. Okay? We need to give tribute to Dolores Cannon, also to Edgar Mitchell, because both of them knew this, but yet materialist people that just focus on the craft, the craft. Look at this new video that came out. Let's analyze it. Okay, that's not where we need to go. I mean, we could still do that. You could study videos, to death, but that's not going to give you clues. For 75 years, it has not given much. Now I'm going to put an audio of Dr. Raymond Moody. Dr. Raymond Moody is the father of near-death experiences. He wrote a book in 1975, Life After Life, which became the foundation for what we now know as near-death experiences. He coined the term. So this man has a PhD in philosophy, and he's a medical doctor. He's a psychiatrist. And he's listened to tens of thousands of near-death experience stories. So he's going to now talk about consciousness and materialism.
Consciousness and materialism. And I have never been a materialist, I'm sorry. And it's, as that's not been my philosophical. I can recite to you all the great materialist philosophers and what their arguments are, but I just don't buy it. To me, it's consciousness has always been primary from the time I was 7 or 8. And, I had to pass all my philosophy tests on all the materialist philosophers. I mean, I understand that stuff. It's just that I don't agree with it.
He doesn't agree with it. Now, am I presenting woo-woo stuff? Okay? Woo-woo science, pure metaphysics, BS? No, I'm presenting hardcore scientists. As I said, we have 3 PhD physicists on our board of directors. Besides Rudy Schild, we also have Dr. Claude Swanson, who received a PhD in physics from Princeton University. And guess what Albert Einstein taught after he left Germany? Princeton, one of the leading physics universities in the world. So this is not woo-woo science here. This man has a PhD in philosophy, and he's a medical psychiatrist since 1975, even way before that. He's been researching near-death experiences. Okay, Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell, okay? He's a PhD from my school, the University of California, Berkeley. And he's going to talk about contact modalities and consciousness. He is one of the world's leading consciousness scholars and paranormal scholars. He's interviewed, folks here know Jacques Vallée? Raise your hands if you've heard of his name before. Dr. John Mack, and obviously Edgar Mitchell, who I talked about. He interviewed these people more than 30 years ago. Jacques Vallée, he interviewed him in 1975. So this is not just some cockamamie person here. This is someone who has been fundamental to discovering this phenomenon for many, many, many years. He's the pretty one with the bald head. What he said basically, that all of the paranormal contact modalities, which I still haven't discussed yet, are all interrelated, that consciousness is the key to be able to understand this, and that that's how we need to move in terms of future research in this way. And he's interviewed most of the major ufology folks, and he's saying that if you've just focused on materialism, you're not going to get to the point. So eventually what we want to be able to do with our research study, we want to be able to compare the experiencers of UFO contact, near-death experience contact, out-of-body contact, remote viewing, people that have taken ayahuasca or magic mushrooms, hallucinogens. At least half of the people that take these things have contact with non-human intelligence. Remote viewers, all of the major remote viewers have had contact with non-human intelligence. Okay, so we need to be able to see how it's all interrelated here. Finally, we get to the contact modalities, okay? An easy way of thinking it is that there are numerous ways that individuals are piercing the veil of our reality and having contact with non-human intelligence. UFO contact experiencers, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, communication with ghosts and spirits, remote viewing, shamanic hallucinogenic journeys, mediumship, channeling, and numerous other human encounters with non-human intelligence and its related paranormal phenomenon. And this is just a graphic visualization that consciousness connects all of these modalities, and also all of these modalities, what they share in common is the manipulation of space-time. And we're going to be talking about that later on, Jacques Vallée specifically. FREE used many survey questions from statistical research of Dr. Jeffrey Long, who you'll find out in a couple of minutes here. He's a medical doctor, oncologist. He has been researching the near-death experience phenomenon and out-of-body experiences for more than 20 years. He has statistical surveys of over 5,000 NDE contact experiences, near-death experiences, and 3,000 out-of-body contact experiences. Also, we utilize the research of Dr. Raymond Moody, who I talked about before, is the father of near-death experiences, and Dr. Kenneth Ring, who is an emeritus professor of psychology and for 30 years studied near-death experiences. I'm also going to be presenting some highlights, short 1 minute highlights from both Dr. Jeffrey Long and Dr. Raymond Moody. But later on, I'm going to be presenting statistics, data, and all of that data statistics is not from near-death experiences. I want to make that very, very important. It's from our UFO contact experiencers. But yet, when you look at that data, you think that you're talking about near-death experiences, not out-of-body experiences. And I'll go over that in a couple of minutes. This is Dr. Jeffrey Long on the left. He's going to be joining our board of directors very shortly. And Dr. Raymond Moody with the bald head.
It's a fascinating thing to look at the commonalities in various kinds of experiences, like near-death experiences and contact experiences with other kinds of intelligences. And I would say that would be a vast undertaking. I mean, I couldn't say beforehand what the result would be, but I mean, I think it's something worth doing. However, the question you asked, whether I think there's something that's interesting here and valuable, and the answer is yes.
Okay. The importance of being able to compare all of these experiences together.
I certainly hope that in the future research and investigation interests of humanity, that we're focused more on that sort of integrative, multifaceted approach to the big question of consciousness. And you can find information about that from so many different scientific scholarly paths. There's literally a wealth of wisdom out there that is waiting to be understood in these investigations. Studying UFOs, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, mystical experiences of all types. These are all things that people all around the world have seen, heard, felt, and if we can get better organized in sharing that collective wisdom brought back from those shared experiences, my, how humanity is going to grow and learn. I think as time goes on, we're becoming more aware that there is a vast number of different ways to study contact experiences that people have had of contacting unearthly intelligence. The more open-minded we are, the more aware we are of that's going on everywhere, the more we're going to be open to learning the wisdom that is inherent in these kinds of investigations. It's amazing, too, people that have had these exceptional experiences from all walks of life. It's not like it's the most learned and educated and the proudest among us from that point of view, but it's literally listening. And that's the foundation of wisdom anyway, isn't it? Just listening. You listen to anybody, everywhere, whatever their walk in life, wherever they live. If they've had that exceptional experience, listen and listen carefully. And as we grow to do that more and more often, to listen more and more carefully, what great doors of wisdom I expect would be open.
That's the key here. People come to these conferences not to hear people like me and the other speakers. They come here to interact with each other, to share stories, these experiences. And it's very important for you to be open, not to hide and dismiss your experiences. Now is the time to learn from each other. What Jeffrey's also saying, again, the importance that all of these contact experiences are all interrelated. They need to be studied as one. Again, these are two of the top 5 major near-death experiencers, researchers in the world. They're saying the same thing. And my wife ordered me to cut my beard off because she said I looked like an old man, so I complied. Okay, what I'm now going to talk about, I'm going to show you lots of data, statistics, and which resulted in this 820-page book. Once you read it, you could do calisthenics with it. It weighs 3.5 pounds. Okay? This is 5 years. 5 years of people working thousands of hours, all volunteers, We've received zero funding. Zero funding. So this is all volunteers to do this. The name of our book is Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And our research study is the world's first comprehensive, multi-language, statistical, academic research study on UAP-related contact experiencers. Took 5 years, 820 pages, and we have 15 chapters. The following presentation is going to be data which was solely derived from this research study. To qualify to take our survey, you have to have had two components. One is you have to have seen a UFO, and you have to have contact with a non-human intelligence. The first year we spent developing the methodology. How in the hell do you begin to study this? No one has ever done it before. Dr. John Klimo, who is a retired professor of psychology, who taught research methodology for over 40 years, mainly to PhD students, was the chair of our research committee. Luckily, we got him right after he had just retired. And also, I would like to add, is John is one of the few academics to be a tenured faculty member who has focused primarily on the paranormal. So we really had the cream of the crop here. We then spent 2 to 4 years, between years 2 to year 4, 3 entire years, administering the 3 surveys that we developed. And then we spent the last year, year 5, analyzing the data, reviewing the data, analyzing, doing an analysis of the data, and then writing the chapters for our book. And the academic research articles that we've published in 2 peer-reviewed journals. We had 2 surveys. 1 and 2, that was comprised of 600 quantitative questions. We had also survey 3, which was 70 open-ended questions. For 3 years, we publicized our research study on YouTube in weekly postings to over 500 Facebook sites, mainly comprised of ufology and paranormal Facebook organizations. We also had a mailing list of over 8,000 names. MUFON, we had the top people in MUFON, 250 people from MUFON. If you ever wrote a book about UFOs or the paranormal, you got an email. Over 100 radio interviews, more than 100. Internet postings. So in other words, if anyone in the English language had an interest in these topics, you knew about our research study, at least most people. Also, very important, we asked people to fill out our surveys based only upon conscious, explicit memory, not upon memory from hypnotic regression, lucid dreams, or channeling. For example, I could have taken a 2-hour Dolores Cannon hypnotic regression class, open up a shingle, open up a practice doing hypnotic regression, asking tons of leading questions. That's not very good data. Also, for lucid dreams, what is a lucid dream and what is just a normal dream? So if we eventually wanted to publish our research study in a peer-reviewed academic journal, we could not include those things in there. However, we did include hypnotic regression, lucid dreams, channeling, etc., in the open-ended questions. So we eventually received 10,000 pages of responses to the 70 questions. But we asked people paragraph by paragraph to identify, okay, this came from a lucid dream. This came from a hypnotic regression. This came from a conscious memory, et cetera, et cetera. So we still included that, but not in the quantitative responses, in the open-ended questions. We also implemented our surveys in multiple languages. What I'm going to be talking about now is just the English language survey. We also have it in Spanish, and we received over 850 responses. The Spanish language is still starting because we started 2 years behind the English language. Okay, our focus in terms of topic questions. We knew that this phenomenon was way, way more complicated than just abductions. But yet, when I go on radio shows, they always introduce me as Rey Hernandez, part of a team that's doing abduction research. We're not doing abduction research. Well, we found out that abduction is just one small component to this phenomenon, okay? We instead focused on the family history of contact. The actual contact experience, we broke it down. Telepathic contact, contact in a 3D reality, which was on Earth, on a UFO craft, or in another 3-dimensional reality, and also contact in a multi-dimensional matrix reality. We also talked about, had questions about the psychic and the paranormal aspects of these experiences. For example, just on the paranormal aspect, we had more than 75 questions. We also had questions about the nature of the entity, the intelligence that they were entering with, the type, the physical experience, positive, negative, or neutral, a whole bunch of abduction-related type of questions. So it was the physical aspects of the experience. Then the information that people receive from this non-human intelligence. And Kathy Martin wrote a chapter on the information that people received. Physical experiences both during and after the contact experiences, and the psychological aspects. How were you before, how were you during, and how you are now after these experiences. So this is a very, very comprehensive research study. We wound up with more than 4,145 individuals from more than 125 countries. So this is not just 10 people, okay? These are thousands of people from 125 countries. Phase 2, we received 2,292. For phase 3, it was, which is the people had to write out the details of their experiences, 1,456. As I said, we've received 10,000 pages for phase 3. Now, the data that I'm going to be presenting, we did a cutoff in April of 2017. So the data for the cutoff was at 3,200 people. So it's not the total 4,000. We still maintain collecting the data, but these additional 1,000 people we didn't include in the research study. The reason for that is that we began to publish the findings of our research study. And we didn't want to be accused of tainting the pool because we're revealing the data of what is showing and people are still taking a survey. So we did a cutoff. So the data that you're going to be seeing now is from 3,200 people, which is still quite a lot. Okay, 4 major findings I'm going to be going over. The first major finding, these experiences were overwhelmingly positive experiences. That comes as a big shock to some of you, but not to many that are in this audience here. Number 2, the result was a positive transformation of the experiencer, a total personality profile transformation. And I'll go over each of these details. Number 3, these experiences were primarily not physical. While you might have seen a UFO, while you might have had contact with non-human intelligence, like in my case, twice I've seen UFOs very, very up close, one time 30 feet. I saw an energy being 10 feet away from me. My wife saw these 8-foot tall beings, humanoid beings, dressed in white monk's robes that floated right in front of her. So we have, my wife has seen about at least 10 UFOs, most of them up close. Okay. So while she has seen craft, and I have seen craft, we have seen physical beings, the vast majority of our experiences have been paranormal. It was like 2 years, from my case, of non-stop paranormal experiences. And I'm sure most of the experiencers here are nodding their heads because we talked about it, and many, many other folks have talked about these experiences. It's just a whole boatload of paranormal experiences. But yet, materialist mainstream ufology doesn't talk about that. They hear paranormal, they totally dismiss it. But yet, that's the reality of people here in this audience. Also, the 4th major finding, that there is a manipulation of space-time, which we're going to go about later on, discuss the details of that. And that, in turn, leads to the hypotheses that this intelligence might be interdimensional, from another dimension. And Jacques Vallée is going to talk about that later on. Again, Jacques Vallée is right now the most important ufology researcher that currently lives today, after Alan Hynek. He's been working on this phenomenon for more than 50 years. And he's totally underappreciated. Okay, first topic was this phenomenon. Your experience, was it positive, negative, or neutral? We asked more than 25 questions because depending on how you ask the questions, you get a different response, okay? So we asked over 40 questions that address this issue. The following is just a few of the examples. I don't have time to go over everyone. How would you describe your experiences? Again, is that a leading question? not leading. This is straightforward. Was it a positive, negative, or neutral? What did we find out? 66% said it was positive, 5% said it was negative, 29% it was neutral. Again, this is not 1, 2, or 3, or 4 people. These are thousands of people from all over the world in the English language. The Spanish language was even more positive. It was like 85% positive. Okay? That's 850 people from the Spanish language. Okay, we even asked a question for the types of beings. Now let's take a good look at this chart. The number one type of being was not the small grays. It was actually the energy beings at 55%. Human-looking beings were number 2 at 52%. The short grays, 3 to 4 feet tall, 51%. Ghosts and spirit forms, 47%. The tall grays, 33%. The reptilians, 25%. Insectoid, the mantid beings, 21%. We had other type of categories. People are literally seeing hundreds of different types of beings. And I didn't put it in there because I wanted to cut to the chase and get to the major ones. Now, in red, that's the people that perceive these experiences as negative. As you can see, for the energy beings, 7% negative. Human looking, 5% negative. The short grays, who would have guessed that 11%? Only 11% said that these experiences were negative. But yet you go to the internet, and what do you see? This evil-looking gray with like a scalpel ready to dissect you and cut your, you know what off, you know? And that's the perception of the internet. But what the reality is, 1,173 people, not talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, no, 1,173 people, only 11%. The vast majority, 59%, said it was neutral, okay? Let's shoot down all the way to the evil, dreaded reptilians. The ones that, if you go to the internet, okay, rape your wife, eat your children, and Barack Obama's a reptilian, okay? So let's find out, 23% said their experiences were negative. But then when we looked at phase 3, which is the detail of what people wrote out for their experiences, it wasn't that they raped your spouse and ate your children and stuff like that, or that the reptilian, did some crazy stuff to you. No, people were scared out of their wits. These beings were 8 feet tall, 450 pounds, 500 pounds, bulging muscles with a crocodile head, okay, and an alligator body. So if that thing stood right in front of me, I'm going to be defecating in my pants, okay? So that's what the people wrote, the negative. It was the shock, the ontological shock. But then 60% said that the experience was neutral. That's most of these cases, okay? Now, there were positive experiences out of the reptilians, 17%, and these are the reptilians that eventually had telepathic communication with the person. Barbara Lamb, who was a very, very famous researcher, I know that she's probably spoken here before, she was talking about her experience. She was vacuumed the floor, and all of a sudden, this reptilian appeared right in front of her, huge. Now, she didn't freak out because she's been working with experiencers for 40 years. And so there was telepathic communication back and forth with that being. And so she viewed her experiences as mainly positive. But if you're a person that's not exposed to these things, and all of a sudden you see this thing right in front of you, you're going to be traumatized the rest of your life. Okay? But yet, only 22%, 23% said that. So again, how many people have seen reptilians? 644. Isn't that crazy? Okay, that's a lot of reptilians floating around. Okay, if you could stop your ET contact experiences, and we use the term ET and non-human intelligence. And if you could stop your ET contact experiences, would you? Well, guess what? 84% don't stop it. Keep it coming. Okay? This is what thousands of people are saying. This is not the fiction, the BS that you see on the internet. Do you believe that ET are bad, malevolent, or evil? 91% said no. Now, again, this is only just a few examples, okay? But all the 40 questions were very similar to this. Overall contact with non-human intelligence has been very positive. As I said, this question was asked many, many different ways. Only 5.3% stated that their experiences were mainly negative. 84% do not make these experiences stop. 9.7% said that these entities are bad, malevolent, evil. Even for all the different types of non-human intelligence, which I just showed you, the vast majority were either positive or neutral, and not mainly negative. Now again, this is science. This is fact. Okay? This is not the internet BS. Finding number 2, contact resulted in a positive transformation of the experiencer. What we did is we borrowed 80 questions from an academic research study that Dr. Kenneth Ring did in 1986. This man was a professor at the University of Connecticut, focused for 25 years on near-death experiences. Okay? So what he did is he compared 85 people that had near-death experiences with 85 people that had abduction type of experiences. So people think that, you know, this is oil and water. They don't mix, okay? But he heard so many stories that people were changing the same way. So he asked 80 questions of how did you change? How were you before? How were you after? So he found out that 85% of these people went through a dramatic psychological profile change. So we wanted to see, for both groups, okay? So we wanted to duplicate that now, not with 85 people, but with thousands of people. What would they say? And the survey says, oh, what did I jump to that? I blew it. This is just another pie chart where we asked for more specific. Was your experience highly positive, slightly positive, neutral, slightly negative, or highly negative? What we found out was that highly negative was 4%, slightly negative was 6%, neutral 17%, slightly positive 22%, and 51%. I put that chart in the wrong place. It took my introduction there. So for all these 80 questions, what we found out for Dr. Kenneth Ring's, the 80 questions that we asked, between 73 to 85%, depending on the questions that were asked, these people had a significant transformation for the positive. Okay? Now let me go over just a few of these questions. And the survey says, my desire to help others strongly increased. My compassion for others strongly increased. My appreciation of the ordinary things of life strongly increased. My sensitivity to the suffering of others strongly increased. My concern with spiritual matters strongly increased. Again, the total was 60 plus 23%. 83% said they became much more concerned with spiritual matters. My desire to achieve a higher consciousness, again, strongly increased. My appreciation of nature, okay, these people became tree huggers, 84%. My spiritual feelings, my concern with the welfare of the planet, my understanding of what life is all about, my personal sense of purpose in life, my concern with ecological matters, all strongly increased. Now let's see what decreased. My concern with material things. Money, 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 money. I need a new Mercedes-Benz every 2 years. Okay? After you've had an out-of-body experience, you're floating out of your body, you see your body underneath, or after one of these entities brings you to another multi-dimensional reality and teaches you things, you know, which is I'm going to talk about later on, you think money's going to be important for you? My interest in organized religion strongly decreased. My competitive tendencies, get your fellow co-worker, you know, totally stomp that person down, so what? So you can get the promotion. No. That's not happening with UFO contact experiencers. You might not think so, okay? But look at Calvin, how sweet he is. Okay, he's just an illustration. Okay, he might not know it, but he's a sweet man. My fear of death, okay, strongly decreased, 83%. My desire to become a well-known person. You want to be famous? No. You need to give them a UFO contact experience. You need to give them a near-death experience. You have to give them an out-of-body experience. All of a sudden, I don't care about becoming famous, you know. That's what thousands of people are saying. Okay, now the third major finding. UFO contact experiences have had primarily paranormal and not physical contact with non-human intelligence. Okay. 95% have had paranormal experiences in their home. Okay? Out of thousands of people, 95%, my house is tons of paranormal experiences. Well, let's explore some of those later. 80% have had an out-of-body experience. 37% have had a near-death experience. Okay. May I ask, if you're able to, how many people here have had an out-of-body experience? Oh my goodness. Lots of folks. This is more rare, but how many of you have had a near-death experience? Okay, still quite a few. Okay, quite a bit. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of others, but you don't want to raise your hand. Okay? 51% have had a medical healing. Do you realize that? Medical healing is associated with ETs. Okay? That's happened with my dog. My dog, we're going to be totally euthanizing our dog that same afternoon. But yet in the morning, an energy being appeared to my wife and to me, made my wife disappear right in front of me and the dog, put me to sleep. 45 minutes later, when I woke up, my wife was in the middle of the living room. Hallelujah, hallelujah, the angels cured her, the angels cured her. And our dog, who was totally paralyzed that we were going to be putting to sleep that afternoon, was running around the whole living room. Okay? We went to our vet a couple of days later because she was taking Viagra for her heart, diuretics to flush out the excess liquids, in her body, and all these pills. And so what the hell happened to her? Because before she was like an old lady with arthritis. She couldn't run, she couldn't jump, anything. Now she was like a teenager, jumping and running all over the place. So we said, should she still continue with that medication? He says, no. He said, what the hell happened to her? Well, we changed the diet, Okay, 50% have had a medical healing. Out-of-body experiences, 80%. Near-death experiences, 37%. Okay? Medical healings, 50%. Our book, we have a chapter here, written by a retired medical doctor, Dr. Joseph Burks, and another man named Preston Dennett, who just recently published 300 UFO healings in Preston Dennett's book. So this is not a rare occurrence. It's just ufology. The flying saucer crowd does not want to talk about that because that's like weird stuff, Weird stuff. But I'm sure many people here, and I've spoken to some of you, have had medical healings by non-human intelligence. So it's about time that we open up and start talking about it. Okay, telepathic communications, 78%. 8 out of 10 people have had telepathic communications. Were you ever transported to a matrix reality? 50%. Have you ever had a past life memory? 66%. Have you seen ghosts or spirits? 76%. Do you have memories of ever visiting heaven? 46%. Have you seen small multicolored orbs? 67%. 2 out of 3 people. Not via picture. I was talking to a lady this morning that works for the Canon group here for this conference. She's I don't want to tell her what her role is, but she saw this big, gigantic orb in her backyard. Okay? This lady that was, who's a chemistry teacher, my wife's close friend, when we went to visit her in New York, we told her, we had all these weird stuff happen last year. And then she opens up, and she tells me about contact with the little grays. She used to play Ring Around the Rosie with them when she was little, okay? When she was a teenager, she had an experience with them as well. And she saw, again, this big, gigantic orb that I told this lady that I had breakfast with this morning. So very, very common, but people don't talk about it, okay? Objects mysteriously appear right in front of you. Those are called aports. I have a friend of mine. This man is now my best friend. He has a whole shelf of aports, okay? Many of them with his wife, they just plop right there, okay? How many of you are familiar with this concept or this term aports, of things just plopping in? Okay, quite a bit. And I'm sure many of you that raised your hand have had things that plop in right in front of you as well. You just don't publicly talk about it. Aports, when objects just materialize right in front of you. And it's usually like when you're watching TV, all of a sudden you hear a noise, and you look next to you, and there's like a ring. My friend has 4 rings his size, okay? And his size, okay? Tons of other these types of experiences. Anyway, let's moving around. Energy auras. When people that have close contact with non-human intelligence, all of a sudden, they become very, very psychic. Precognition skills. My wife was like, don't take that car out. We're not going on that trip. And for a whole week, she was harassing me, right? And then finally, I took the car to the mechanic. Ray, thank God you didn't take that car out because the engine would have exploded, right? So She saw a tumor in my back. She like she knew it. She like with her hand scanned it. You got a tumor in the back, you know? I said, how the hell you know? You got a tumor in your back. You're gonna need to go to the doctor. And after like 3 days of her harassing me nonstop, I went to the doctor and they did some type of imaging on me. It was, holy God, Ray, you got a tumor in your back. It needs to be taken out. Thank God it was not cancerous, you know? But my wife, it was like hundreds of these things, okay? Many of you that have had close encounters have had that. Precognition skills. Same thing as seeing energy auras around people. Again, 74%. Very common. Deceased people. Met and conversed with a ghost. 47%. These people must be crazy, right? Half the people. Hello, Aunt Susie. Haven't seen you in a while. How's it up there? Right? Half the people. They can't all be crazy, but yet it's a reality. It's happening. We need to be open about it and not clam up and be quiet, because this phenomenon is very, very real, and it's associated with the UFO contact phenomenon. I could go on and on. These are all different types of paranormal experiences. Now, information received, and that's the book written by Kathy Martin. Did you receive any type of communication by ET, non-human intelligence? 80% said yes, I received communication from them. Was communication in your native language? 75% yes. Rarely do you hear an English-speaking person, all of a sudden the ET is talking French, you know? Doesn't work that way. For the Spanish language people, the same thing. The ET is talking in Spanish, perfect Spanish. They might get the country mixed up, you know? There's a big difference among the countries in terms of word usage. So, you know, this ET is from Argentina, man. He's not from Paraguay, you know? And so, did the ET impart reassuring messages, like Calvin said this morning? 61% said, look, we're not going to harm you. Chill out. Did the ETs, and what the Calvin did, he wound up trying to beat the hell out of that woman, you know, that ET female. Did the ETs provide you with a spiritual message? 54%. Did the ETs give you messages of love or oneness? 54%. Did the ETs express to you concern about humanity's behavior? That we're freaking barbarians. We're killing off each other. In the last 100 years, how many millions did we kill? Over 100 million human beings we killed. Polluting, we're destroying this planet completely. Okay, these are the type of messages that 45%, almost half the people, are receiving. Very consistent messages. Do you believe you possess information about advanced science, physics, technology that you had no idea how in the hell you know that? 42%. Did the ETs give you information about they want you to share with others? 41%. Did they give you environmental messages regarding planet Earth? 39%. Did they give you information about a future natural catastrophe or a depopulation of humanity? 32%. Did they give you information about God or our Creator? 31%. Did they tell you about the concept of parallel universes, many universes? 31%. Did they give information about the death process, okay? Or the spirit world? 30%. Did they ever give you information about time? And always is that time doesn't exist, okay? That's the message people get, 30%. Communication about life after physical death, 29%. We repeated a lot of questions to see if these people were awake when they took the survey. Okay, so it's the same thing. One was 30%, the other one was 29%. Anyway, let me move forward with some of these questions. There was tons of reincarnation, 26%. Gave them messages of reincarnation. That there was an agreement between yourself and the ET, 26%. Dolores Cannon's books are all filled with this agreement stuff, okay? Go check out a Dolores Cannon book, and you'll see many of these issues come up in her writings. Okay, now, physical experiences and abductions. Okay, have you had an ET contact but have had no conscious recollection of ever being abducted? In other words, you have had contact but no abduction. That's, my case, 68%. Now, you have had contact but you've been abducted, 34%. So whenever they revert to our work as abduction research, no, you're missing 2/3 of the people. Okay? 2/3 of the people you're missing. Okay. Also, the abductees, we asked them specific questions. How would you characterize your first few and your last few contact experiences with non-human intelligence? 35% said, I'm a conscious contactee. But initially, it was only 20%. Okay? In their first 4 experiences, 19, it rose all the way to 35. I'm not an abductee, but a contactee. Okay? That remained consistent at about 35%. Now, it was an abduction where they sought my permission. Can we abduct you today? Okay? I was treated with humane, compassionate treatment. That pretty much stayed the same, 8.7%. Now, it was a case of abduction of a milder kind, a slightly more caring kind. That went from 18% and went to 13%. Now, it was an abduction of the most negative kind, 18% in their initial experiences. Now, when they're answering the survey, it's only 8%. Said, yeah, I had an abduction. It was an abduction of the most negative kind. But as you can see, 70% of these abductees are calling themselves what? Contactees, not abductees. So something took place before when these experiences first started till when they're filling out the survey. What we found out was that 38% of these individuals initially viewed their experiences as negative. Then over time, what happened is that their experiences changed. No longer were they put on a slab table paralyzed, okay, and physically inspected. Now they got to walk around the ship. 250 people got actually to operate the ship with their mind, okay? Then the human beings and the energy beings became involved, okay? No longer the grays. Then they were brought to other realities, brought to the spirit world, received all these teachings, all this information like I just went over, okay? But the people that are usually the most traumatized are the people that have only had 1 or 2 experiences. Most of them, these abduction type of experiences. You talk to these people that have had 1 or 2 or 3, just mainly abduction experiences, nothing else, those are the most traumatized, okay? But the vast majority, their experiences changed, and they had multiple experiences. Let's go over how many experiences. How many times have you seen or interacted with these non-human intelligence, with these ETs, okay? 40% said more than 20 times, okay? 6 point something percent was between 11 and 20. Between 8 to 10, again, it must have been around 10%. 5 and 7 was 10%. 2 to 4 was 22%. And only once was 14%. And it's out of this crowd here that you get most of the people who are still traumatized by these experiences. Now, what we also discovered was that the more experiences you had, the more positive it became. Okay? So this bar graph shows the more experiences, the more positive it becomes. And that was what I told you earlier, is that the experiences changed over time, and the type of being that they were interacting with changed over time. I think Calvin said that he thought that ugly being that was a robot, okay? So you get sort of like this higher evolution type of being that people are interacting with. Like the beginning is like a medical examination. You know, that's to start you off with. You know, it's like before I go out with you, you got to get an AIDS test, you know? And then after that, okay, you're clean? All right, we can go forward. I'm not saying that my wife did that to me, but that's sort of like what happened there. Again, this is just a summary. 68% have not had an abduction. 32% have had an abduction. Of the ones that were abducted, the vast majority were more than 20 times. Okay. The people that are only taken once or twice were the ones that had the most negative experiences. The more abductions you have had, the more positive your experiences become. The majority have had more than 3 abduction experiences call themselves contactees and not abductees. 489 people had abductions. 146 were individuals that had MILABs, military abductions, that they were abducted by humans. Okay? So 30% of the abductions that people in our survey filled out were done by other humans. We're talking about human ETs. We're talking about military abductions. That's after they knew about you, that you were an experiencer. Then they came and they wanted to take your blood out and all these things. So and again, most of these experiences were old experiences, not recent stuff. So it seems like they're not doing that, at least from our data, our statistics. Okay? So thus, the summary. Okay? All previous quote-unquote abduction studies, the small studies that were done by certain people, they've eliminated 2/3 of the people, because 2/3 were not abductees. Okay? And again, okay, now, contact experiences in a matrix reality involving a manipulation of space-time. Okay? Almost double the number of people were brought to another matrix reality than people that have had an abduction. Does ufology know that? No. Our survey study knows that because we asked that question. Now let's talk about what this matrix reality is. Okay? 749 people have contact with experiences with a non-human intelligence in this type of matrix reality. And if anyone's seen the movie Contact by Jodie Foster, something similar to that. Not so much the picture of the Matrix, you know, but it's more like Jodie Foster's movie. Okay, 584 people have had contact with non-human intelligence in this matrix reality. 45% were human-looking, 38% was some other type, because we had like 12 boxes to check off. So people said, no, it wasn't any of those 12 that you told me, it was some other type. The ghost and spirit form, 36%. The short grays was 21%. The tall grays were 15%. So it seems like even in this matrix reality, the grays are still involved somehow. Jacques Vallée, okay, as I said, working in this field since the early 60s. He's published, I think, like 15 different books on this topic.
I think that from my own point of view, I'm going to be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than visitors from another planet, because I think they could be something much more interesting.
Something from another dimension, a space or time?
I think what the UFO phenomenon is teaching us is that we don't understand time and space. Mm-hmm. Here are objects, I think we have to call them objects, that are physical, that interact with the environment, that cause effects on the witnesses, on the psychology and the physiology of the witnesses, and leave traces on the ground, and yet are capable of, appear to be capable of manipulating time and space in ways that go beyond what our physics understands today.
So again, he said he doesn't think that these are just physical entities from a planet, okay? He's alluding to the fact, and in several other interviews, he says that he suspects that these are multidimensional entities. Why? Because it involves a manipulation of space-time. Now, being brought to a contact matrix reality, that's definitely manipulation of space-time, okay? My one experience that I had, I won't go into detail, but definitely I was taken to another matrix reality, okay? And I was put back without any time missing. In this other reality, I was there for a half an hour, at least a half an hour. But yet, I was brought right back. How do I know? Because I was listening to a radio interview. And that radio interview, the guy that was talking did not skip a beat. Okay? So it's like you're taking out of time. And you're brought right back. So, but I'm not the only one. There are literally thousands of people that are saying the same thing. And Jacques Vallée knew about that. So it's a manipulation of space-time that's taking place. Now, we ask questions, okay? Were you physically present in your body when you were brought to this matrix reality? 61%, yes, I was physically like Jodie Foster. She was in her body. Was your consciousness separated from your body? Yes, 67%. Did your thoughts speed up? 57%. Were your senses more vivid than usual? 76%, yes. So it's not like you're drugged up. It's like all of a sudden you're heightened. You have all this awareness, additional awareness. Did you feel separate from your body? 53%. Did you have feeling of peace or pleasantness? 73%. Did you see or feel surrounded by a brilliant light? 52%. Did you encounter a mystical being, presence, or hear a voice? 79%. Did you see deceased or religious spirits? 37%. Did scenes from your past come back to you? 26%. Did you see or encounter some type of unearthly world? 70%. Did time seem to speed up or slow down? 76%. And in my case, time stopped. Did you feel a sense of harmony or a unity with the universe? 69%. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? 58%. And immediately, it gets taken away. Okay? The scenes from the future come to you, 41%. The scenes from the past come to you, 31%. Did the reality of this multidimensional experience seem real to you? 83% yes. And most of them said just as real as we're talking right now. Did you perceive that time did not exist? 71%. And this is Dr. Jeffrey Long.
In near-death experiences, certainly, and in some out-of-body experiences, there is absolutely a manipulation of space-time as we know it. One of my direct survey questions is, did you notice a sense of alteration of space or time? Great majority of people say yes, and over, we hear that, especially in near-death experiences when they're in an unearthly realm, time has no meaning at all. Space is not like we know here. They can move in a way that would be absolutely impossible on Earth. It seems to be that communication is radically different, telepathic. Everything that they're sharing sounds like it's a completely different realm of existence. It's, if you will, a multiverse. And it seems to be a multiverse realm that is remarkably non-physical in comparison to the earthly environment we're so familiar with.
Okay, spirituality, another major concept to this phenomenon, and this is where Dolores Cannon comes in. Spirituality and spirit world experiences. 97, these are all beliefs that they believe. 97% believe that these ETs, non-human intelligence, travel to other dimensions. 91% that they believe that there's a grand plan in motion and that the experiences are all part of it. 89% believe that there's a connection between non-human intelligence and the paranormal. 83% believe that there's a connection between non-human intelligence and the spirit world. 82% believe that non-human intelligence can travel to the past and to the future. 75% believe that there's a connection between non-human intelligence and reincarnation. 45% have reached an agreement with non-human intelligence. 38% believe that non-human intelligence are modern angels. And that's my wife. To her, they're not modern angels. They're just pure angels. Because she had been praying all night for an angelic miracle, and an angel to her appeared in our living room, which totally healed our dog. 30% believe that they've been taken to a UFO craft.
Those that have near-death experiences very often, in fact most of them, are much more interested in spiritual matters. They may spend more time praying, meditating, and sort of thinking about, if you will, afterlife and spiritual matters and how that impacts them on Earth.
Okay, now you're starting to see a pattern here between people that have had UFO contact experiences and what these near-death experiencers are telling us. Very, very similar. I'm going to skip over this here because we're losing a little bit of time because we started late. Let me go over the commonalities between near-death experiences and UFO contact experiences. One, communication. Always telepathic among both groups. Number two, the out-of-body experience is very prevalent among both experiences. As you showed in our studies, I showed 80% of the people have had out-of-body experiences. Energy beings and spirit beings are the top two type of beings seen in near-death experiences. Okay? The energy being is the number one type of being, and the spirit being is number 4. And the human-looking type of being is number 2 in the UFO contact list, as well as for the near-death experiences. Medical healings. There are tons of documented cases of medical healings regarding near-death experiences. Reincarnation comes up in both. Visions of the future, visions of the past. The total personality profile transformation, which I discussed earlier. People being taken to a matrix reality. Precognition when you return from these experiences for both groups. Paranormal experiences for both groups. Later on, people are seeing ghosts and spirits for both groups. Electronic devices, both groups mention the same thing, susceptibility to watches and computers. Spiritual messages, consciousness is non-local, manipulation of space-time, multi-dimensional reality. Dr. John Mack, Again, a pioneer in this field, professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. He wrote a book in 99, titled Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters. And he wrote, people know their experiences and what they have undergone does not fit with the prevailing mechanistic worldview. In other words, the materialist worldview. Large percentages of people seem to know there is an unseen world or hidden dimensions of reality.
From every shred of my research and thousands of experiences that I've reviewed, I'm getting, if you will, a picture of what it's all about. We seem to exist as conscious beings before we came to our earthly life. We're here in our earthly life. The purpose seems to be to have lessons, to have experiences that are unique to what is required to us to be physical beings. At the end of our earthly life, we will return to that one, that all, God, or if you will, that collective consciousness that exists in the afterlife. And that seems to be, all of this points to us being eternal beings. We are literally spiritual beings having an earthly experience.
We are spiritual beings having an earthly experience. Go read Dolores Cannon. You will see that consistently throughout all of her writings. So getting back to what I said earlier, Dolores Cannon was right. Thank you very much.